So, greetings, everyone. I'm Raymond Jetson, and I am so thankful that you guys are joining me for another installment of the Half My Age highlight. And for those of you who are sharing for the first time, this is a moment where I get to spend time with some amazing people who happen to be, give or take a year here and there, half my age. And I am truly excited to welcome to this conversation this morning Dr. Sharbreon Plummer, just a wonderfully gifted half my age that I'm excited to spend this time with. Greetings, Dr. Plummer.
Good morning. Good morning.
And welcome. I'm so glad that you've made time to share with us, and I want to dive right in. So, who is Sharbreon Plummer in 25 words or less?
Sharbreon Plummer is a daughter, a sister, a friend, an optimist, who is passionate about her community, our histories, and the stories that we hold.
Mm. So there were a couple of things that jumped out to me in that. One was an optimist. Uh, so what makes you optimistic today? How do you hold on to that optimism in the disruptive environment in which we find ourselves today?
First, I think I lean on the fact that I am a product of people who, if we look at all logic and reason, we're not supposed to survive. And that keeps me grounded, that keeps me moving forward. And to think about the resolve and strength that my ancestors had to have in order for me to get to this point keeps me optimistic, because if they can make it experiencing all that they did, then I know that I'll be all right. And then also just the beauty and the possibilities of life, the things that I've seen happen in the world in the most precarious circumstances, the serendipitous relationships that I'm able to build, the people such as yourself that I connect with by happenstance that lead to some really great relationships and engagements. That keeps me hopeful and optimistic.
And you brought one of my favorite words into that description of who you are, and it is about this value you place on community. You identify yourself by community. Say more about that for me.
Of course, as a Black woman, I'm a product of the African diaspora, so I think about myself as a bit of like a global citizen. But also, I was born and raised in North Baton Rouge. And that to me is a very distinct community that sometimes often gets relegated to the margins in our city, but holds deep significance to me as well. And so when I say community, I'm speaking about my global family, but especially my local family, the local Black community of Baton Rouge that has done amazing work since the inception of this city, but it oftentimes goes under-recognized or unnoticed.
So I'm going to give an unabashed plug here and invite people to go to the metromorphosis.net website and look at the Black Futures, the Sankofa report on the history of a partial history of Black Baton Rouge. I think it just aligns with so many of the things that you just said. So what is your current work? How are you busy making a difference in that community and in the world around?
Well, it's funny you said Sankofa, because if I had to sum it up in one word, that would be it. Thinking about, there it is, thinking about the past, how I'm looking back and using that information to make positive progress in the present is so important to me. Formally, in terms of training and education, my life has been art for so long. But I realized that while I was very passionate about finding issues related to equity, issues in art history, how our cultures and other cultures within marginalized communities may have existed outside of the canon and not been recognized by the canon, I thought it was important to take that a step further. And then that's when I sort of shifted, not from art, but used art as a vehicle to create change within various sectors. So at the root of my work has always been art, but now it's definitely being more explicit about the need to understand equity, race, identity, all of these other factors. So in addition to my work as an artist, fun fact, I was actually trained as a metalsmith. A lot of people don't know.
A metalsmith.
So metals, I made jewelry and small objects, which I still do, but now I work closely with individuals and organizations to help them sort through a variety of issues, be they structural, creating systems, or even thinking about how art can be used creatively to educate through professional development or curriculum building, so that we can continue to be the best versions of ourselves that we can be, so that way we can move forward in serving the communities that we claim we want to serve. I think it's not enough to just say, here's what I want to do for this community, but there's also a lot of self-reflection that needs to go into that process. So self-improvement should be parallel to the improvement that you're trying to put out into the world. So as a consultant, that's sort of the crux of what I do.
So what's a moment that gives you joy in your work where you say, that was worth it?
Anytime I am able to assist someone with really understanding the power that they possess, especially if they've been feeling disempowered for so long, that pivot point, that sort of light bulb moment makes it worth it every time. A quick story. I remember once I had someone come to me, I was working at an organization, and she was telling me all the things that were going wrong at her institution. And I knew her personally, so it was really a way for me to sort of mine information to figure out how I could help with my role and the privileges and resources that I had. But after that conversation, I told her, I was like, now, I'm glad you told me this, but if you were to go somewhere else to someone who may not look like you, to someone that doesn't have the context that I have, they may feel like they can undercut you, they can, not give you as much as they would give another institution because you would be willing to accept penance because, your organization is suffering so severely. You actually have power. I know you have all of these problems, but what you produce and what you do has value. And if you go in understanding and knowing that you have value in this, money doesn't always have to equal value. It's bigger than money. You're providing something that they want to see thrive and work in the community. Unfortunately, because of inequities in nonprofit structures, groups get different types of funding and things like that. So having that moment where it was like, you're right, I do. And we just sort of talk through like, what have you been doing over the last 10 years, 20 years? And just that moment of reflection and saying, you're right, next time I go into this space, this is how I'm going to negotiate and advocate for myself. That made it worth it. I use that example often because that was the first time I was like, yes, this is what I want to see happen.
Well, great. Thanks for sharing that. And so at the heart of the Half My Age highlight is recognizing the importance of intergenerational connections and what I describe as what is hopefully the wisdom of the elders and the ingenuity of the youngers. And so how has the wisdom of the elders impacted who you are and what you do?
From birth, my mom will tell you I was always with either my grandmother or my great-grandmother. I grew up, at their feet, and now I'm towering over them, but, they still hold a huge place in my heart. My great-grandmother was actually a cook by trade. So I think about the conversation that we had a little while ago about where some of our loved ones may not have been as advanced in terms of education, et cetera. They were so wise. And that was her. And she definitely instilled that work ethic in me. All of the sort of matrilineal connections I think about in my family, they're tidbits, bits and pieces that I see now that exist within myself that I can attribute it to this person or that person. Even just, I feel like anytime I've, been moving around both personally and professionally, there's always been an elder that says, I see something in you, and they pour into that. And that's been so significant. And I keep all of those lessons. I'm a storyteller. I love stories. So anytime I get a chance to just sit and listen to the stories of those who came before me, I think it's key. It's integral to my own growth and just possession and acquisition of knowledge, both formally and informally. It's pivotal.
So I operate from this premise that the gifts, the wisdom of the elders, just the pouring into our lives, excuse me, that we receive from others, comes with an obligation, and it comes with an obligation to do likewise. And so, how are you pouring into and sharing the wisdom and the insights that you have been able to receive and glean? What is your practice of creating that Sankofa relationship?
I think of it both on a macro and micro level. So if I'm thinking big, it's, who am I as a future ancestor, and what's the legacy that I want to leave in the world? And so that might involve thinking about structural issues and systemic things that I want to support dismantling, so that those who come in after me are able to advance more quickly or get access to the resources that they need, or simply just live and thrive. So that to me is sort of the behind the curtain, behind the scenes work that I lean really heavily into. But on a personal note, I'm an educator, so I teach undergraduate and master's level courses. But even within those courses, there's a deep level of mentorship that I embed into any opportunity I can. So whether it's talking to students and working with them one-on-one, if any of them watch this, they'll laugh because they know they have my cell phone number. I've gotten text messages where it's like, I'm grappling with this at work. What do I do? And I'm like, give me a few minutes and we can talk through it and strategize. Or even if I'm in any setting where I see someone who may be struggling or not even struggling, but could just use added support, added love and care. I think it's important to pour into people in that way, especially in my field, because there is such an underrepresentation of us, that I try to take a moment to connect and figure out how can I support your goals and your advancement based on my skill set and my knowledge. I always keep that at the forefront.
So I want to draw back on a word that you mentioned in describing you, who you are, and that I called attention to earlier, and it is this optimist. And so as an educator, and as you deal with the generations that are coming behind you, what do you see or experience that causes you to maintain that optimism?
The fire and passion that they possess. I look at my students and the discussions that they have, the work that they're doing in the world outside of my course. And while we aren't that far in age, we're far enough to where I can think back to myself at that time. And I'm like, wow, if I had even like a tenth of this fire, I could have done some things. But I think that, seeing how my students and other people that I engage with are so clear about who they are, what they want to put into the world, the things that they will and will not stand for, their value systems and the ways in which they communicate that to others, and the ways in which they're unapologetic about it, gives me hope and it makes me optimistic, because I'm seeing en masse different groups that are saying, here's who I am, I'm not budging on this. This is how I want to show up in the world. This is what I want to offer to my community. And it's just really empowering to see, and it gives me hope. And it also reinvigorates me to wake up and keep doing what I'm doing.
Well, and just for the record, you have done some things. And so whatever dose of fire you had, it certainly motivated you to do some things. And so I want to close this conversation by creating what I describe as a prophetic moment. There is somebody who will be watching this conversation that really needs to hear something about their own agency and making a difference in the world. What do you say to them?
I say that you cannot do it alone. No one should feel that they have to take the weight of the world on their shoulders. I know there are so many problems. I know there are so many things that make us want to take action and get involved and feel invigorated. But that can be also a recipe for burnout. And I believe that care and balance is important. reciprocal relationship building, being intentional about who we build relationships with and how we support networks is key. So I always think about just supporting oneself by surrounding oneself with like minds, with thought leaders, or even people who are able to challenge you. You can't do anything in a bubble or a vacuum. We all need one another, and we all possess different skills that can supplement, what someone else may not have, or what someone else may not have as a strength. I think that keeping that in mind and always keeping that at the forefront will allow us to keep the resolve and the energy that we need to stay the course to create the change that we want to see in the world.
Thank you for being an optimist. Thank you for valuing community. Thank you for opening the windows of the wonderful world of art to us in ways that are new, inspiring, or old, and heartfelt. And so just thank you for being you. Thank you for making the time to share with me in this Half My Age highlight. I wish you the best, my sister, and thank you.
Thank you so much.